What would you say if you knew your life was about to end? Not your last social media post, no, not a rushed goodbye, but your final deliberate words, written to someone you love, someone who will carry your legacy forward. That's exactly what we have in Second Timothy. This is not just another letter, you see. This is the last recorded voice of the Apostle Paul, written from a cold prison cell, staring death in the face. And yet it doesn't sound like despair, it sounds like fire, like urgency, like unshakable hope. If you want to understand what real faith looks like when everything is on the line, well, keep watching. What's the world behind 2 Timothy? This letter is widely understood to be the final letter written by the Apostle Paul. He writes it to Timothy, his spiritual son and trusted co-worker in ministry. But the situation has changed, and dramatically. Paul is now imprisoned in Rome, likely during the reign of Emperor Nero around 64 and 67 AD. And this is not house arrest like before. No, this is a harsh final imprisonment, one that will end in execution. The tone of the letter reflects that reality. Paul knows his time is short. So why does he write? Not to defend himself, not to complain. He writes to pass the torch. He urges Timothy to remain faithful, to guard the message of the gospel, and to endure suffering without compromise. And here's a very curious detail. In this letter, Paul mentions that everyone in Asia has deserted him. Now that's shocking, right? The great missionary abandoned, alone, forgotten by many, and yet this is the letter where his faith shines the brightest. And that's why here's our 3 insights that might change how you read this letter. First insight, faith is not proven in comfort, but in abandonment. One of the most striking things about 2 Timothy is how alone Paul is. Friends have left, colleagues have disappeared, the movement he helped build seems now so distant, and yet Paul doesn't reinterpret his faith because of his circumstances. No, he says, I'm not ashamed. And that's shocking. We often assume that if God is with us, things will go well, right? But Paul shows the opposite. Faithfulness to God may lead you into isolation, not necessarily applause. And this forces a deeper question. Is your faith built on outcomes or on conviction? Because for Paul, even abandonment cannot shake what he knows to be true. And the second insight is this. The gospel is something you guard, not just believe. Paul repeatedly tells Timothy to guard the good deposit, and that's a fascinating phrase. It suggests the gospel is not just a message you receive, it's a treasure. You are a treasure you are entrusted with, something valuable, but also something that can be distorted if neglected. And in a world full of competing ideas and pressure and compromise, Timothy's role is not to reinvent the Bible, the message, but to preserve it and faithfully. And this challenges a very modern assumption, right? That truth should always adapt to culture. Well, culture is very important, but Paul's vision is different. The gospel transforms culture. It is not meant to be reshaped by it. You keep the good things, but many things in culture must be transformed by the gospel. And here's the third insight. The Bible is not just informative, it also forms you. And this is an important theme in 1 Timothy as well. Now, in this second letter, you find one of the most quoted lines in the New Testament. All Scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. In context, Paul is not making an abstract theological statement here. He's speaking to someone who is about to lead the church in a hostile world. The Bible, he says, teaches and corrects and rebukes and trains. In other words, the Bible forms a person, not just intellectually, but morally and spiritually and practically every day. And here's the key. Timothy doesn't just need more information. He needs formation to endure. Because in the end, knowledge alone doesn't sustain you. Character does. So why 2 Timothy still matters today? Well, this letter matters because it shows us what faith looks like at the very end. Not when everything is working, but when everything is falling apart. This letter asks, will you remain faithful when it costs you? Will you hold on to truth when it's unpopular? Will you keep going when others walk away? This letter reminds us that the Christian life is not just about starting well, it's about finishing well. And here's the closing line. At the end of his life, Paul doesn't talk about success, numbers, or recognition. Have you noticed that? He says, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. That's the legacy he leaves behind. And maybe that's the question 2 Timothy leaves with us. When your story is told, when your race is finished, will it be said of you not that you were impressive, that you changed the Bible to please so many people, but that you were faithful? Think about it.